Here's Tabula Rasa by Arvo Pärt. All right. So I encourage you, if you feel like it, grab a pencil and a piece of paper. And you don't have to show your work, although it'd be great to contribute in the chat. I'll grab a piece of scratch paper over here. And I know one of my traditional ways, or my, not traditional, but a thing that I've gone back to over the years that's worked for me is something that I found in the Jazz Musician's Creative Guide to Practicing. And that's a great book written by David Berkman. Let's see. In order to share it with you guys, I got to take a screenshot, and then I got to access that screenshot. One second here. Yes. Here we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. So, let me know if the music is distracting, but I'm going to read this. Okay, so this is really the first real chapter, I think. I can't recall. I gave the book away, as I do with too much of my stuff. I have stuff, then I move, and I give it away. But anyways, okay, this is cool. You're going to like this. So I'm going to read it. Welcome, blah, 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 blah. Okay, problems are pretty easy to identify. And although this is written for jazz musicians, it's really not. It's written for everybody. But it's a book on jazz practice. So, problems are pretty easy to identify, and yet often students have no idea what to practice. As I said earlier, this book is about breaking down big, difficult things into smaller, manageable, practicable things that you can master in a few minutes. There are two important skills here. Skill 1, finding many different interesting and/or easy ways to approach a problem. And skill 2, learning how to practice these various simpler approaches effectively. Maybe this book influenced me a lot more than I give it credit for, or I've realized, but I definitely have taken this model. Okay, so this is our first kind of checking out of an idea for talking about goals and plans and all that sort of stuff. And it's this, generating a list of things that are difficult. Let me check in. Okay, music is distracting. All right, I'm going to pause the music. There we go. Thanks. Let's see. He's playing the pump. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. I should have interacted that. That's fun. Okay. Wiki. Okay. We'll get back to the cool. All right, we have answers about the Ray Charles tune. But now we're on to goals. We'll come back to that in a bit. All right, so generating a list of things that are difficult. So maybe I'll zoom in a little bit more. This is easy to do, very helpful, and yet most students never do it. If you're having trouble coming up with a list, you are probably not playing enough gigs. That's kind of true. I mean, it is easy to list all the things that we're not good at, though. Artists in general are pretty good at that. Okay, so going out on gigs, especially as a young musician or older musician, new musician, you are constantly confronted by things that you can't really do. For example, I remember the first time I played rhythm changes. I was in high school living in Cleveland, and I got to play at a vegetarian restaurant with an older bassist, crazy bebopper named Willis, who had played with the great bebop pianist Barry Harris when he lived in New York. As a young alto player, so I dragged my Fender Rhodes down to the place to play for $25 and dinner. At some point, somebody called rhythm changes, and I didn't know what that meant. The alto player opened a fake book to anthropology. He pointed and said, "There." When they counted the tune off, I was flabbergasted. How could anyone play over that many chords so fast? Needless to say, I probably didn't rock the joint on that particular tune. Okay, one more aside before we continue. I am always amazed at students who balk at playing gigs because they feel they aren't ready. My father, a lawyer... Okay, we're going to skip that because that's sort of his editorial stuff. Okay. Actually, a lot of what I know because I had to learn it for a gigs, giant steps. Okay, blah 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 blah. No one knows how to do everything. Pluckiness. Okay, all right. So he's just talking about reasons why you need to learn stuff, but the idea is generating a list. Let me take a snapshot of the second page where, and if you have, for everybody that wants to participate now, we're gonna write our lists in a second. Okay, here we go. Here's the second page. So not all these things are problems per se. Some of these things are things that you're really interested in. For example, it isn't really a problem if you don't use large intervals when you solo, but if you don't, that might be something you want to incorporate. And these are specifically sort of moderately advanced to advanced jazz stuff, especially on the accordion. And not all of you are jazz players or want to be specialized in getting really into jazz. But I think this idea in general is really great for anything you're doing, any music that you might want to play. Okay, so what we're really talking about, I'm starting up at the top of the page. What we're really talking about are things that you want to incorporate into your playings, things that have eluded you, preceded only by an intuitive approach. Some of these can be problems. Some are things you just might want to explore for yourself. Okay, so let's take a look at a list here, and then we can talk about some example lists, and then maybe we'll take a little time. I'll put on a blues tune and we can write a list of things that we want to work on. So here's an example list, suggestions that many students need to practice. Chord change spellings, using scales, arpeggios, chromatic approach notes, guide tone lines, playing over complex chord progressions, tunes that go in several different keys like body and soul, giant steps, changes that move very quickly, and that's the way that's complex. Playing fast tempos, ear training, creating more interesting left-hand comps for pianists, rhythmically, harmonically, melodically. A lot of this stuff carries over to accordion. But I wonder, chat, if you're in front of the chat, you're feeling at all brain tingly here. You can either start writing stuff down, or maybe we'll just throw some ideas just to describe. So really, we can reduce this to anything you want to work on. So what's some stuff you want to work on? What are some dreams, goals, projects? And I think a great place to start, before we start getting like particular and breaking it down into goals or even editing, just take a minute or 5 or 10 now or on your own, and just throw out all the ideas that come to you. And probably if you start now, later today, tomorrow, next week, in the middle of the year, you're going to have new ideas come. And that might be a reason to start a list somewhere if you're that type of person that keeps lists of stuff or collects ideas. Or just do it again throughout the year. But regardless, right now we're talking about for January, March, or January, February, March, or for the rest of the year or whatever. From this point forward, what's some stuff that you want to work on? And I know I have some stuff. Let me consult the chat. Okay, is a chromatic approach note playing a quick half step above or below the note you want to play? Yes, that's exactly what it is. So it's approaching, and usually I think the approach note implies that it's below, but maybe it could be either way. Yeah, and that's a very important part of going from just playing a jazz scale to playing something that sounds like jazz improvisation. And there's a lot of good teachers that show, okay, well, we suggest learn these jazz scales, okay, but it still doesn't sound like a jazz musician. Okay, if we take a look at this jazz solo, essentially this scale that we told you to learn is in there, but there's these approach notes here and here and here, and all of a sudden now, with a little bit more style and with these approach notes, now it sounds like a real jazz solo. So it is a very important part. Tom Accordion's suggestions are great. Improve sight reading. Play in, what's a mote key? Is that a typo, or is mote something more keys. Okay, thanks. Sorry. I know it. I'm learning to type every day. Left hand stuff. For me, it was fun playing some Christmas tunes by myself with students, and then I posted one, and just working on like left-hand accompaniment stuff. It reminds me, I want to get better at independence, so I'm gonna write that down. So, two hands, independence, and syncopation. Always more. I mean, on all this stuff, for all of us. Okay, so why not? Why not listen to some blues and do a little bit of writing? Let's see. Let me go